Picture this. The ocean, 12 million years ago. The water is warm, the sun barely penetrates the surface, and somewhere in the blue-green haze below, something enormous is moving. You've heard of Megladon. You've seen the documentaries, you've watched the movies. You know the teeth, the jaw, the sheer mythological weight of the thing. A shark the length of a school bus, the weight of a railroad car, the undisputed king of the ancient seas. Except it wasn't. Because lurking in those same waters, hunting the same prey, in the same ocean, at the same time, was something that made Megledon look like a very large problem. Something with teeth bigger than a T-Rex's, a bite that paleontologists have called the largest of any tetrapod ever found, and a hunger that did not discriminate. Today we're talking about Leviathan melvillae, the real Leviathan, the creature that the ocean actually feared. And by the end of this video you're going to be asking one question that scientists still cannot fully answer. Why did something this perfect ever disappear? Let's start at the beginning, or rather, let's start in a desert. In November of 2008, a researcher on a school field trip to the coastal desert of Peru stumbled across something in the sediments of the Pisco Formation, a partially preserved skull, enormous, ancient, and unmistakably terrifying. The fossils included a skull with teeth and a mandible, pulled from rock that was roughly 12 to 13 million years old. Scientists named the creature after two legends, the biblical sea monster Leviathan and Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick. They called it Leviathan melvillae until they realised that name had already been used for a mastodon, an extinct type of elephant. So they reached for the original Hebrew spelling, Leviathan, which honestly sounds even more menacing. Now here's your first clue that something unusual is going on. Everything we know about this animal comes from one partially preserved skull and jaw, one specimen, that's it. And yet, what that single skull tells us is so staggering that scientists could barely contain themselves. So let's go through what we know, fact by fact, because each one is more absurd than the last. Fact 1. The size. Leviathan melvillae was estimated to be between 13.5 and 17.5 meters long. That is roughly 45 to 57 feet. For context, that puts it in the same size category as a modern sperm whale, and it weighed somewhere in the range of 50 tons, about the same as 6 full-grown elephants stacked on top of each other, which is an image you're absolutely welcome to sit with. Now, you might be thinking, that's about the same size as Megledon, and you would be right. The two predators were remarkably close in scale. But here is where Leviathan starts pulling ahead in the nightmare department. Fact 2. The teeth. Megledon had teeth, big ones, serrated, triangular, up to about 18 centimeters long, the kind of teeth that collectors still find on beaches today and immediately post to social media. Impressive. Genuinely impressive. But Leviathan melvillae had teeth up to 36 centimeters long. That is 14 inches. That is longer than your forearm. These are described as the largest functional biting teeth of any known animal, not counting tusks, which are technically teeth, but are used for digging and display, not for biting flesh. These teeth were functional. They were built for one thing, seizing and tearing apart large prey. Scientists have noted that they were more than twice the length of a T-Rex's teeth. Twice. And unlike the modern sperm whale, which has teeth only in its lower jaw and doesn't even use them to chew, it just swallows squid whole, Leviathan had massive, fully functional enamel-coated teeth in both its upper and lower jaws. The teeth were deeply embedded and designed to interlock, so that when Leviathan bit down on something, that something was not getting away. But wait, it gets worse, or better, depending on how you feel about prehistoric monsters. Fact 3. The jaws. The skull of Leviathan was 3 meters long, 10 feet. Paleontologists have described the jaw muscles as enormous. The attachment area for the temporalis, the primary jaw-closing muscle, was proportionally much larger than in modern sperm whales, and closer in proportion to that of a killer whale. The mouth itself was approximately 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. That is 3 times the size of the mouth of a modern killer whale. It was large enough to fit an adult human being, or, as one researcher memorably noted, the entire head of a Tyrannosaurus rex. Scientists have used the phrase, the biggest tetrapod bite ever found, to describe what this jaw was capable of. Let that phrase echo around your skull for a moment. The biggest bite of any animal with a backbone ever found. So what exactly was it biting? Fact 4. The diet. Here is where Leviathan separates itself from every other predator in the Miocene ocean. Modern sperm whales are deep divers. They go down 1 kilometre or more hunting giant squid in the darkness using suction. They are remarkable animals, but they are eating squid. Leviathan was not eating squid. The robust snout, the massive teeth in both jaws, the jaw muscle architecture, all of it points to one conclusion: Leviathan was eating other whales. Specifically, it likely preyed on baleen whales between 7 and 10 metres long. Picture a whale, a genuinely large whale, the kind that would make headlines today if it washed ashore, and Leviathan was hunting those things the way a lion hunts a wildebeest. It also likely took seals, dolphins, sharks of all sizes, and possibly giant squid as an afterthought. Its feeding ecology has been compared to a giant killer whale, but at a scale that makes modern orcas look like a warm-up act. And here is where the story gets really interesting, because Leviathan was not alone at the top. Fact 5. The rivalry. During the Miocene epoch, there were 2 apex predators in the ocean that were genuinely comparable in size and threat. One was Leviathan, the other was Megledon. The 2 animals shared the same waters, hunted similar prey, and almost certainly encountered each other. Scientists believe that juvenile Leviathan may have been vulnerable to Megledon attacks, while adult Leviathan may have been able to hold its own against the shark or even hunt it. The relationship between these 2 animals is one of the most tantalizing mysteries in paleontology, because the fossil record can only tell us so much. What we know is that they coexisted, competed, and shaped each other's world. Think of it as the ancient ocean's version of an arms race, except both competitors weighed 50 tons and had teeth the size of your arm. There is a reason Leviathan travelled in pods. Evidence suggests it moved in small family groups, possibly between 8 and 11 individuals, similar to the social structure of modern sperm whales. In a world where Megledon also prowled, there was strength in numbers. Coordinated hunting would have made Leviathan even more devastating. A pod of these animals descending on a group of baleen whales would have been an event of almost unimaginable violence and scale. But here is the first thread of something darker, something that we need to pull on gently. Fact 6. The skull organ. On the top of Leviathan's skull, there was a large depression, a supracranial basin. In modern sperm whales, this structure houses the spermaceti organ, a reservoir of waxy fluid that functions in echolocation, helping the whale navigate and hunt in deep, dark water. Leviathan had a similar structure, which suggests it could echolocate, that it was using biological sonar to detect prey in the ocean, potentially from enormous distances. But here's the thing that scientists find puzzling. Leviathan was almost certainly a surface or near-surface hunter. It wasn't diving to the crushing depths that modern sperm whales reach. So what was the spermaceti organ for? Was it echolocation? Was it used for communication within the pod? Was it, and this is where it gets genuinely wild, a battering ram? Some researchers have proposed that the massive oil-filled head of Leviathan may have been used to ram prey, or to ram rival males during competition. The organ's exact function remains an open question. And open questions, as you're about to find out, are something of a theme with this animal. Because here is fact 7, and this is where the tone of our story begins to shift. Fact 7. The fossil record is almost nothing. We have one skull, one. Isolated teeth have been found in other locations, Chile, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, and even California, which tells us that Leviathan or a very close relative ranged widely across the ancient ocean, potentially across the entire southern hemisphere and beyond. But in terms of a body, a skeleton, a complete picture of what this animal actually looked like in full, we have almost nothing. Everything we understand about its size, its weight, its hunting behaviour, its social structure, all of it is inference. Educated, rigorous, scientifically grounded inference, but inference nonetheless. We're reconstructing a Leviathan from a fragment, and that should make you feel something, because it means that the real animal, the full truth of what Leviathan was, is still partially hidden from us, still lurking in a sense beneath the surface of what we know. Which brings us at last to the question that has been circling this entire video like a shadow in deep water. Fact 8. The extinction. Leviathan went extinct. Sometime around the early Pliocene, roughly 5 million years ago, give or take, the fossil record goes silent. No more teeth, no more skulls, no more evidence of the greatest biting machine that ever lived. And the question is, why? Here is what scientists know, or think they know. The Miocene epoch was warmer than today. The oceans were rich with a diverse array of baleen whales, medium-sized, abundant, accessible near the surface. This was Leviathan's buffet. This was the ecological condition that made a 50-ton surface-hunting whale-eater not just possible, but dominant. And then the climate began to change. Global temperatures started falling toward the end of the Miocene. Ocean ecosystems began to shift. The diverse array of smaller baleen whales that Leviathan depended on declined in both diversity and numbers. The whales that survived this cooling trend tended to be larger, the ancestors of the giants we see today, and they began migrating toward colder polar waters to follow their own prey. Leviathan's buffet was closing, the menu was shrinking, and a predator that specialized in hunting medium-sized baleen whales near the surface was suddenly finding that its prey was either disappearing or becoming too large and too far away to hunt efficiently. This is what scientists call a prey collapse, and it is one of the most devastating things that can happen to a specialist predator. The more perfectly adapted you are to a specific food source, the more catastrophically you suffer when that food source disappears. Leviathan's greatest strength, its absolute mastery of surface whale hunting, may have been the very thing that doomed it, but that is not the whole story, because at roughly the same time, something else was happening. Fact 9, the competition that replaced them. As Leviathan and Megledon faded from the fossil record, a new kind of predator was rising. The earliest killer whales, the ancestors of modern orcas, were beginning to diversify during this period. And orcas, as anyone who has ever watched a nature documentary knows, are extraordinarily adaptable. They hunt in coordinated groups, they can switch prey, they can follow food sources into cold water. They are in almost every measurable way more flexible than Leviathan. Where Leviathan was the ultimate specialist, orcas were the ultimate generalists. And in a world that was rapidly changing, flexibility beat perfection. There is something almost poetic about that. The most specialized, most powerful, most terrifyingly effective predator the ocean had ever produced. Brought down not by something stronger, but by something more adaptable. The ocean did not defeat Leviathan in a fight, it simply changed the rules. And yet, and here is where the mystery deepens, we still do not fully know why. Fact 10. The unsolved puzzle. The extinction of Leviathan melville is not a closed case. Scientists have theories. The cooling climate, the collapse of its prey base, the emergence of more adaptable competitors, the disruption of ocean currents caused by the closing of ancient seaways. All of these factors likely played a role, but likely played a role is not the same as a definitive answer. The honest truth, in 2026, is that we do not have a complete explanation for why one of the most powerful predators in the history of life on Earth simply vanished. Part of the problem is the fossil record. With only one skull and a scattering of isolated teeth, we cannot trace Leviathan's decline in detail. We cannot watch its population shrink. We cannot see where it went or how long it held on. The animal entered the fossil record with a single spectacular skull, dominated the Miocene ocean for millions of years, and then disappeared as quietly as anything that large has ever disappeared. We are left with absence, with silence, with the shape of something enormous that is no longer there, and there is something about that silence that refuses to sit still, because every time a new tooth turns up in the desert of Chile, on a beach in Australia, in the sediment of a California canyon, it is a reminder that we have not found everything yet, that the full story of Leviathan is still being written, one fragment at a time, by people with brushes and patience and a willingness to sit in the dirt and listen to what the rock has to say. Think about what it would have meant to be in that Miocene ocean. The water is warm and blue. Somewhere below the surface, a pod of enormous toothed whales is moving in loose formation, communicating in sounds too low for anything smaller to hear. They are following a group of baleen whales, smaller ones, maybe 9 meters long, that have no idea what is behind them. And then one of the Leviathans surges forward, and the water turns, and something ancient and absolute happens. The ocean was not peaceful. It was not serene. It was a place where the largest bite in the history of tetrapod life was a regular Tuesday. And then one day, it wasn't. The ocean changed, the prey moved, the temperatures dropped, and the Leviathan, for all its magnificence, could not adapt fast enough. Or maybe it could, and we just haven't found the evidence yet. Maybe somewhere in a formation we haven't excavated, in a layer of rock we haven't dated, there are teeth that push the story further than we currently know. Maybe Leviathan held on longer than the record suggests. Maybe there are chapters of this animal's life we haven't read yet. That is the honest position. That is where science actually lives, not in the confident declaration of final answers, but in the careful admission that the ocean is old and deep and full of things we have not yet found. Leviathan Melvillei was named for a biblical monster and a novelist who wrote about the terror of whales. It turns out both were appropriate, because the real animal was monstrous in the most awe-inspiring sense of the word, a creature so perfectly constructed for killing that the only thing that could end it was time itself, and a planet that refused to stay the same. We know its teeth, we know its skull, we know the shape of its jaw and the size of its bite, and the animals it hunted and the rival it faced in Megledon. And we know that it vanished somewhere around 5 million years ago into a question mark that paleontologists are still trying to close. The Leviathan is gone. We just don't know exactly why. And if that doesn't keep you up at night, I don't know what will. If this video made you feel the weight of deep time, if you want more from the ancient ocean, more from the creatures that ruled it, and the mysteries they left behind, hit subscribe because we are just getting started. Drop in the comments, who wins in a direct encounter, Leviathan or Megledon? The debate is older than the internet, and it is absolutely not settled. And share this with someone who thinks they know all the ocean secrets, because they don't. Nobody does. That's the whole point. Here are the key facts from the research that informed this script. Cited for transparency. Leviathan Melvillei was a predatory toothed whale that lived approximately 12 to 13 million years ago during the Miocene epoch, growing to between 45 and 57 feet in length. A large adult could have weighed up to 50 tons, and the creature is named for Herman Melville and the biblical Leviathan, Leviathan being the Hebrew word for Leviathan. A partial skull of Leviathan melvillei was discovered at the Pisco Formation in Peru in 2008, found by a researcher on a school field trip. The species was originally named Leviathan melvillei, but that name had already been used for a mastodon, an extinct type of elephant, and the rules of zoological nomenclature prohibit this, so the authors renamed it Leviathan, the original Hebrew spelling. Leviathan melvillei is one of the largest predators yet known, with whale experts using the phrase the biggest tetrapod bite ever found to describe it, and its teeth are up to 36 centimeters long, thought to be the largest of any animal yet known. Its massive head measured around 3 meters long and 1.9 meters wide, large enough to swallow a human whole, and its teeth reached 36 centimeters in length, more than twice the length of those of Tyrannosaurus rex. Unlike the modern sperm whale, Leviathan melvillei had large, fully functional teeth in both its upper and lower jaws. The wearing of the teeth indicates they sheared past each other while biting down, and they were deeply embedded into the gums and could interlock, adaptations for holding struggling prey. Leviathan is likely to have preyed upon 7 to 10 meter baleen whales, seals, dolphins, sharks, turtles, and giant squid, and probably hunted in pods of between 8 and 11 individuals, possibly to avoid or overpower Megledon. It has been hypothesized that Leviathan occupied a giant killer whale-like niche, preying upon baleen whales and other large marine mammals. Its mouth was approximately 6 feet long and 4 feet wide, 3 times the size of the mouth of a killer whale, and large enough to fit an adult human. The skull of Leviathan has a large depression called the supracranial basin, which in modern sperm whales houses the spermaceti organ and the melon, organs that function in echolocation, suggesting Leviathan could echolocate in a similar manner. The spermaceti organ is thought to have been used in echolocation and communication, or for ramming prey and other sperm whales. Finds of isolated teeth from locations such as Chile, Argentina, South Africa, and Australia imply that either Leviathan or a close relative survived into the Pliocene, around 5 million years ago, and was present throughout the southern hemisphere. One major cause of Leviathan's extinction was global climate cooling toward the end of the Miocene epoch, which likely impacted ocean ecosystems and may have led to a decline in the diversity, distribution, and size of baleen whales, the primary prey of Leviathan. The ancestors of modern orcas began to diversify during this period and may have been more efficient or adaptable hunters, potentially outcompeting Leviathan for food resources. Everything we know about this incredible creature comes from carefully observing limited fossil records. There has only been one partially preserved skull and jaw discovered,